time for our panel discussion on the key architectural requirements of SASE. The IT leaders who consider migrating to SASE need to educate themselves on how to evaluate and identify the right SASE vendor for their enterprise, how SASE connects users and devices with services and applications securely and reliably, having a look into the service edge of SASE and the different approaches vendors and service providers have a part in their SASE services, discussing the pros and cons of the SASE architecture and the different deployment options, how SASE architecture can reach beyond cybersecurity, and SASE, the fusion of SD-WAN and cybersecurity. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with this, we now invite on the stage and screen our eminent panelists. First up, Benedict Suleiman, who's the VP IT CIO, Ramsey Sime Darby Healthcare, Indonesia. Well, Benedict, an Indonesian citizen with more than 20 years of experience in multiple industries and a Microsoft certified system engineer. He's somebody who has a vast experience in the ICT operation, project management, security, hardware, and network infrastructure. Currently leading the IT transformation in one of the most leading hospital chain in Indonesia. He's somebody to produce a standardized, centralized, and a consolidated IT environment. With this, I now welcome Benedict. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Pleasure having you. Joining Benedict on the screen now is Vijender Mishra, who's the CISO of Alchemy Laboratories, India. Well, Vijender is a seasoned cybersecurity professional having more than 20 plus years of global proven record in cyber defense in aligning and integrating technology and cybersecurity with the business roadmap. With this, I now welcome on screen Vijender Mishra.
Thank you very much for this beautiful introduction. I look forward. Yeah, thank you.
Likewise. Joining next on the screen and stage is Subrat Kumar Kanungo, who's the Principal Consulting Architect, Cloud and Networking, Kyndryl, India. Well, Subrat is an IT transformation leader with more than 25 years of diversified experience in driving vision and managing information technology services for large enterprises. He has an expertise in driving business and IT alignment programs, leading to gains in business-friendly product or service deliveries. With this, I now welcome Subrat on the screen. Apologies, Subrat, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you. And ladies and gentlemen, now it is time to introduce to you the moderator of the panel discussion. It's Joshua Arvind Lath, who's the Chief Technology Officer of NewWorks Interactive Labs, Philippines. Well, Joshua, being the Chief Technology Officer of NewWorks Interactive Labs, Inc., for the past couple of years has been sharing his knowledge in several international and local conferences and events to discuss practical strategies for companies and professionals. With this, I welcome Joshua as the moderator of the session.
Hello, good day. Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, with this, the panel is all yours. We request you, if you may have any questions directed towards our panel, to please type it up in the Q&A section during the course of the panel itself, so that if time allows, we can take it up at the end. With this, Joshua, it's all up to you to take forth with your panel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so we have, I think, a good 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes talking about the details. So let's use this opportunity to learn from this amazing panel of panelists and speakers who are experts in their own field. So from my end, my goal here is to facilitate and make sure that we get to discuss some of the things in detail at the same time. If you guys also have other recommendations, suggestions, in addition to what the other panelists has recommended or answered, then feel free to do so. So we'll have probably around 6 to 7 focus areas right now. So I'll start with the first one. So the first topic would be how SASE architectures can reach beyond cybersecurity. So I'll repeat. So the topic would be how SASE architectures can reach beyond cybersecurity. So we'll have Vijender talk about more about these things. So go Vijender.
Thank you very much for having me here today. And as you said that, how SASE architecture can reach beyond cybersecurity. Yeah. So I mean, just to start with a background of SASE. SASE is not just about cybersecurity and SD-WAN. Yeah. So I mean, normally, that's a perspective you have, a perception we have in our mind that when we talk about SASE, we talk about just cybersecurity and SD-WAN. But SASE is something much more bigger than cybersecurity and SD-WAN. Yeah. And from my and growing number of other perspectives also, there are two glaring issues which I wanted to highlight about the architecture model. Yeah. So basically, there are two glaring issues with how this architecture model was formulated. Yeah. So the first one is it lessly focuses on network security functions, of course, because when we talk about SASE, we talk about network security also. So the first was basically to focus more on network security functions as opposed to all network functions. Yeah. The second one, the concept outlines the importance of an intelligent WAN as opposed to the entirely of modern network and enterprise architecture. So when we talk about SASE, it's not about cybersecurity and SD-WAN only. Yeah. The missing network segments also include the wired and wireless LAN, private data center, traditional cloud, and metropolitan edge deployment. So SASE can and likely will be much bigger than Gartner made it out to be. Yeah. So because SASE uses a flexible software as a service model, cybersecurity services can be positioned in the cloud, at a metro edge, or inside a private edge. Yeah. The physical location, when you talk about the physical location where services reside, depends on where end users are located and the level of network performance they require. Yeah, this means that cybersecurity services are delivered in a manner that can dynamically, shift delivery points based on user location. Yeah, and need a fully abstract and delivery of those services as per the user requirement. Yeah. So if you think about it, there are plenty of non-cybersecurity network functions and services that could also benefit from dynamic delivery with the purpose of improving applications performance. And in fact, virtually any application or services could take advantage of such a model. Yeah. Thus, the true benefit of SASE is the service edge portion of the acronym, not the secure access path. The other major aspect of the SASE model that is often glossed over that network transport to and from services can be completely streamlined and abstracted. Yeah, because of the desegregation of applications, data, and users in recent years, we have witnessed traditional routing and switching technologies are being stressed well beyond what they are capable of achieving. Yeah, and this leaves network architects with little choice other than to configure elaborate and complex routing policies to ensure that efficient and semi-predictable transport of business critical, and or you can add latency sensitive data streams. Where SASE can come into play, is a model is intended to place network service. The data flows can be the most efficient, I would say. And I have seen, even during my some of my previous assignments, I have seen that, I have witnessed that because I was closely working on this project. Yeah. So much like how cloud providers can route globally distributed users to the closest cloud data centers. When you talk about Microsoft Azure, or we talk about AWS, we talk about Google Cloud, or any other cloud service provider, based on the geolocations, they can route to the nearest data center. Businesses, corporate networks could route users' traffic to an application located inside the public cloud or private cloud or data center or a metro edge, depending on geographic location and network performance needed. So that's the flexibility you have when you are using this SASE architecture. If a network were intelligent enough to understand the network performance intent for a particular service combined with the physical location of the user or device attempting to access, the services. The network could route traffic to the service edge that provides the most optimal experience to any given moment in the time. So that's the beauty of having SaaS, and that's where it can cross geo boundaries also. But now what's happening? The tech industry is taking SASE to the new as a whole new level. Apparently, I'm not the only one that thinks that SASE model can be much more bigger than it was originally thought to be. Yeah, I can give you a few examples also. Some enterprises, manage service providers, which we call MSP, and including Verizon, and I know a couple of more service providers. They prefer to use more general terms such as dynamic enterprise edge services to describe the combination of SASE, SD-WAN, and other network functions. And they sell it as a bundle package, to the customer. So enterprise technology vendors or MSP are also jumping onto the idea that SASE can be extended further into the enterprises. Yeah, and I mean it has its own advantages of when you adopt and go for the SASE mode. Yeah. So the core concept, I mean, that is my belief, and I can tell you from my experience, the core SASE concept will remain, but the acronym will likely disappear very soon. And I'm a huge, proponent of SASE. I just hate the fact that it was too, narrowly scoped. But I believe that eventually the core aspects of what makes SASE such a fantastic architecture will remain, while non-cybersecurity network functions and next generation flexible edge network technologies will be allowed to join the tribe. Ultimately, what I see in SASE is a dynamic service edge architecture that has the potential to become the next generation foundation for enterprise networks of the future. So that is the whole understanding I have, and I would like to conclude with my statement. What I started, that SASE is not just about cybersecurity and SD-WAN. It is much more bigger than what it was designed initially by Gartner. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, well explained. All right. So the next item in our list would be, so here's the question. So this is a very interesting question. So before the existence of SASE, how is the cloud connected, and how will it be going forward? So I will repeat the question. Before the existence of SASE, how is the cloud connected, and how will it be going forward? So Sir Benedict, hope you can expound more on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Aris. So as we know, I mean, when we started the enterprise connectivity concept, we all know the concept like MPLS, Metro E, right? And then we know about the SD-WAN. Now we are studying about SASE, right? If we go way back, say for instance, when we look at the architecture first, when we have to decide whether it is mesh or star, the basic concept has always been to be centralization, right? You have a centralized data center, or you have a co-location, whether you have a private data center, that's all into the centralized mode. When we are moving into SD-WAN, we are only changing about the connectivity method, which is from the type of connectivity now becoming SD-WAN internet, right? Previously, maybe it's a point-to-point, now into internet. But when we are talking about SASE, it's a different concept because it is no longer centralized, but it's already distributed, right? Where the architecture is now more, in my opinion, more open, right? And then more accessible from the point perspective of the user, right? And it is more feasible right now, especially with the current pandemic situation where people cannot get into the private network or cannot get into the office and they have to work from home, right? This is where SASE has the opportunity. But we have to look around as well, right? If we are going to think about SASE going forward, there are lots of things that we need to consider, right? In terms of the security itself, the changing or the migration of the concept from previously we're talking about SD-WAN, which is a centralized concept, and then into a SASE. which the approach is more on the edge, right, which is on the endpoint. So everything later on in terms of security routing processes will be coming in each of the endpoint. So on this one, actually, for future-wise, this is a very good approach, in my opinion, especially for bigger companies, yeah. But of course, it is not going to be happening in a big bang situations. Definitely, like major companies, they will consider to have hybrid solutions, maybe still considering the centralization as the best way, but decentralization using SASE could be to improve the penetration rate. That's in my opinion.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. I think the next item in our list would help us further understand about SASE. So what are the key architectural requirements of SASE? So I'll repeat the question. What are the key architectural requirements of SASE? So Sir Subrat, hope you can help us with this one.
Well, the future is SASE. I think when it comes to connectivity from the device to the workload, which is pretty much agnostic to any cloud in a multi-cloud environment, it's very important that you position your architecture properly. So the legacy environment is always hub and spoke model, where your users and end users, they connected to the cloud workload or containerized workload, microservices workload, whether on-premise, that's private cloud, or public cloud, where the security construct is almost inside the enterprise. So you have a security policy that is implemented in your central office or in a central data center. But in a SASE model, it gets distributed. So typically, SASE is the expansion of SASE is edge. If you look at the rightmost word, it's called edge, secure access service edge. And the last two words are of very high significance. So the future workloads are going to be services based. It is not going to be an endpoint which has a DNS IP address. It is mostly the endpoints are going to be a SSL, a DNS naming convention. So naming services based endpoint rather than IP address based endpoint. So the services are changing because the workloads are changing. The way the workloads used to get hosted and the way it is getting hosted in the future are going to be is changing rapidly. So it is going to be a services based access workload, and it is going to be mostly instead of a hub and spoke in a distributed architecture, POPs are going to play a very critical role. Where are you going to put your SASE boxes, whether it's in a unique space or it is in any of the carrier agnostic carrier hotels? Those are the edge locations where you put your SASE infrastructure and integrate it appropriately with your central office, so that your end users could come from anywhere. They could come either from inside your office, or they could be distributed workplaces like working from home. They could come from anywhere. But the routing becomes important, and that's where the edge play a role. And so instead of hub and spoke model where the branch offices and enterprise offices get connected to central data center and central data center goes out through internet or intra-office links, that model is changing to a distributed model where in a multi-cloud environment where your SASE or so-called SD-WAN enabled SASE secure edge is placed in a either hosted on a cloud or hosted in a multi-carrier hotel, where these are going to play your traffic routing to give end user access to the services that are getting hosted in a multi-cloud environment. So the change is the architecture, the way end users access their workloads, irrespective of the location, whether they are on-prem or they are at home, irrespective of the location, the way the workloads are getting accessed, whether on-premise or in a multi-cloud fabric, and the workload themselves have gone through a change from a monolithic to microservices. That's where the change of architecture is going to take space. It has already taken space, and then that's major difference. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. And then I think for this next item, although this has been partially answered, but I think it's better if we deep dive a bit on this one. So the next question would be.
Can I add something here?
Sure, go for it.
So as Mr. Subrat has nicely articulated, the architecture, it's a perfect blend, I would say, it's not a one technology. It's a perfect blend, of network architecture, combining edge security and networking capabilities, with cloud native security functions. And if you see, I mean, that's a perfect blend we have. But if you want to, deep dive to understand the components, SASE contains, the components are very critical, and it can go beyond cyber security. I can give you some examples, So it starts with the basic firewall, So I'm talking about the technologies which SASE includes, So starting with the firewall, moving to route and path selection, moving to the quality of service control. Then also you have zero trust network access component. Yeah, you have threat prevention and detection and prevention. You have geo restrictions. You have cloud app discoveries. You have cost optimization features. You have DNS, protection. You have DLP. So altogether, if you see the component SASE contains, it can definitely play a very instrumental role. And it can, you can think of beyond cybersecurity. Yeah? It's a perfect blend of, technology and resources. So definitely, this could be very instrumental for any enterprise.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for adding more information on this item. But yeah. And then for this one, I think this has also been, as I mentioned earlier, partially answered, but I think it's better to deep dive on this one. How can SASE connect users and devices with services and applications securely and reliably? So I hope we can focus on that more. Sir Benedict. Yeah.
I think it already.
From Benedict?
Hello?
Hello, yeah.
Yes. I think some of it have already been elaborated by Mr. Subrat and also Mr. Bijindari, right? When we're talking about how to connect, right? But again, it is not going to be through IP, but definitely name serving applications, that will be the best way on how to do it, right? But of course, in terms of security, in terms of the solutions, firewall, each of the firewalls, whether it is endpoint security, will have to be strengthened. Now, if we have the tendency to open, right, that will be troublesome. Now, when we're talking about SASE itself, part of the security that we must be focusing on, it will be the both connectivity in the endpoint and also in the cloud itself. So when we're talking about previous architecture in like the standard WAN or SD-WAN, mostly we are focusing more on the data center or in the cloud itself. But when we're talking about SASE, of course, improvement will going to be needed in both ways, still on the cloud itself and that also in the endpoint section. Actually, plenty of solutions provided that can provide that, and then obviously it will create a more secure ways for us to get into the connectivity. Maybe Mr. Bijinder earlier, he would like to add something.
Yeah, so I was just telling that, we have witnessed during this pandemic, that users are connecting from anywhere. Yeah. And when users are connecting from anywhere, all the time you have something in your mind about the security, how you're going to facilitate them with the secure access. Yeah. So, this pandemic has, taught us a lot of things which we never thought about. And we had traditional VPN, and then when we found that a lot of challenges are coming during this pandemic, when remote workforce, connecting to an enterprise network. Yeah. So then suddenly, this ZTNA, zero trust and all this came into picture. And then, I was also, a part of one zero trust project for my, organization. So I have seen very closely, that the concept, what I mean to say basically when we talk about users and security, that all we know that, now users are connecting from anywhere rather than within the confines of any organization's office building. Yeah. So the network parameters, from which users connect has vastly, expanded due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. with many users connecting from home, this perimeter has been growing for several years as more and more users connect their laptops and smartphones remotely from the office. And furthermore, the number of users who use their own devices, that's a big challenge we have when we have policy, something like bring your own device, has also significantly increased over the past couple of years, and especially during this pandemic. Such devices which are owned by organizations, we can control easily, but those devices which are under bring your own device policy, it's very difficult to control. Hence, organizations cannot limit with applications which cannot be controlled for personal devices. So lack of control, consequently introduces cybersecurity challenges. In some, what I wanted to highlight here that just as users are no longer required to contact to the network from the office, organizations must adopt to support user-owned devices connecting from other locations, and that's where security becomes a major concern. And SASE has a perfect combination of technology which can really protect insiders from insider threats and outsider threats, and facilitates a secure way to connect to your enterprise network. So that's what I wanted to highlight on this.
Yeah. Another one that I might add, when we have to enforce the security in the endpoint section, sometimes, just like what Mr. Bijinder said, we cannot control the devices, right? For certain companies, they can enforce that. You have to use our own device. If you cannot connect using our own device, then you may not connect it. Sometimes you have that sort of policy, right? But with these sort of conditions, we have to also consider the investment cost, right? Whether we have to equip how many 1,000 people, right, with the devices, and then create our own help desk, for instance, to manage those things, that will be troublesome. So what I have in my experience, what we did is we have this installer of security applications that we are allowing each of the users to install it within their own devices. And with this, we can control their devices. We can identify whether their devices can cope to our standards or not. If they cannot cope to our standards, of course, then we will inform them, okay, you cannot use this sort of devices, right? Because it is not yet secure. Like, for instance, if they are still using Windows 7 or Windows Home, right, which is not applicable, right? So those sort of things could be standardized still. But another features that are maybe improving at this current state is the ability to use Windows Terminal solutions, right? Like Windows Terminal, or even like Citrix, or even like VMware is launching like Workspace ONE. Right? Those sort of terminal services, it's enabled no matter what sort of devices are you using, as long as you're logging into that workspace, right? That's actually already secure, right? And it is being controlled centrally, not distributed.
Yeah, that's the right way and good approach, in fact. Yeah, I agree with you fully, Benedict. Yeah.
Okay. So back to you, Arvis.
And thank you for that. All right, Sir Subrat, can you help us expound on how, although this has been, I guess, partially discussed also, we would like to deep dive on this one further. So, Sir Subrat, how can SASE architectures help reduce evolving threats? Go for it. So please expound more on this specific question.
Can you repeat that question again?
How can SASE architectures help reduce evolving threats?
Well, okay. So first of all, SASE architecture is going to improve the connectivity, and it gives a different transport options from end user and endpoint devices to the workload. That's the first big advantage of a SASE, because it is expected to operate at the edge and help connectivity from the endpoint to the application. That's the primary responsibility for a SASE, and it improves the way the legacy architecture and the new architecture. That's the primary construct for which SASE is built, and it is built for that purpose, and a lot of advantages are there, and we heard from all the panel members. Now the security threats always keeps evolving. There is no end to it. But SASE as a construct, as an architecture, it does so many functionalities, whether it helps in end user management. Like we heard from Benedict about the workspace WAN, Citrix. So endpoint devices get protected. Similarly, there is a firewall inside. There is a DNS attack, DDoS could be prevented. So from many aspects of security threats, whether it is to the endpoint or whether to your network, it is an architecture and how you want to architect it and coexist with other uh, uh, benefits of various uh, uh, tools and utilities from an overall enterprise security standpoint is going to help. Pure just SASE may not give you a lot of security prevention, or it may not help you prevent all kinds of security or evolving security, but definitely it can help you on end user device management if you are part of an ecosystem like Workspace ONE or even Citrix, because everything operates at a SSL layer. Because what SASE believes in is your endpoint connectivity from the endpoint to the workload, your destination is no more IP based. Typically it goes to a SSL or secure support layer based traffic, and because it is not IP based and every recognition is through SSL and the endpoint, what is done naturally is that how the endpoint and the payloads are protected. The endpoints are protected from evolving threats by having unified endpoint management tools. Like, just one of the examples that we heard from Benedict was Workspace ONE, but there are so many. Microsoft has Intune. So many unified endpoint management tools are available. So through a SASE, when an end device connects to its workload, an end workload, be it in the central data center or in the cloud space, that endpoint management tool helps in building the tunnel, and SASE plays a very critical intermediary role there. So that's from an endpoint perspective. Now, so all the security threats that are targeted towards endpoint could be managed to the right kind of balancing of how it is connected and what kind of endpoint protection tools that you have for the DLP. Now, the second one is the transport portion of it. The network or the payload, that transport, how secure it is, how much it is encrypted, and SASE plays a very critical role. It gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of enabling zero trust networking, enabling in terms of more level of encryption, and ensuring that the traffic engineering is rightly balanced where it should go, it's going or not going. So you do a lot of traffic engineering for the payload to be traversing on the transport through SASE, and endpoint management can be prevented if you have a good unified endpoint management tool that takes care of the endpoint. So endpoint management and transport, these two can be handled well if you configure and architect well the SASE deployment model. Just alone SASE may not give you everything that you want for prevention of evolving security threats.
Thank you for that. Yeah, well explained. Yeah. Yeah, go for it, Vijender.
So 2 points already Mr. Subrat has covered nicely. And apart from that, SASE services bring some additional cybersecurity functions, which I wanted to highlight over here. there's a big list even. In fact, if you think about that, what SASE can bring for you when you talk about cybersecurity. Yeah. So it starts with security policy management. So it can help you to provide intent-based policies that define policy actions, like you want to allow, you want to block, or you want to quarantine, or you want to sandbox, or you apply to IP packets associated with the application and something like that. The other one is malware detection and removal. So identify, clean, or remove malware from application flows. That is also one of the the offering it can bring. Then you have UR filtering. It can also help you to filter your URL. It has another component called data loss prevention, DLP, that also it can help you. You have anti-phishing. You have threat detection and prevention and response. So that is one of the features you have, and start with EDR, NDR, TDR, XDR, IDS, IPS. There are multiple, features it has which can really help, to secure your landscape. And also you have, like identity management, you have adaptive access control, you have continuous threat monitoring. So there are multiple, offerings which SASE can bring when you think about cybersecurity and beyond cybersecurity. So that's what I wanted to add on.
All right, thank you for that. Yeah, well explained. So before we have 7 minutes, six or 7 minutes remaining. For everyone watching this live right now, feel free to ask questions. And then, yeah, if we have time later, maybe we can answer. But right now, we'll proceed with the last question for this session. So this is about the fusion of SD-WAN and cybersecurity, considering the relationship between SD-WAN security and SASE. So please go for it, Sir Bijender.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think already we have been discussing that this SASE, the fusion of SD-WAN and cybersecurity. So when it's you combine these technologies, it really makes it very powerful. Yeah. So SASE brings together WAN capabilities and cloud-native security functions. Already we have covered that part. Providing a cloud-first approach of WAN security. SASE, network architecture has evolved. If you see past few years, I mean, I have witnessed, in fact, so I'm happy to share my own experience, in fact, So SASE, network architecture has evolved in response of growing security needs of SD-WAN services. Yeah, as cloud migration and the remotely connected workforce has gained ground, and especially during the pandemic. Yeah, so I mean, SASE meets the need for stronger WAN security, that is for sure. So when we talk about WAN security, I mean, we talk about SD-WAN services, evolved to focus more on what is important for organizations, namely applications and policies, rather than working with low-level networking constructs and functions such as IP packets and access control lists. Yeah. So SD-WAN services enable network administrators to focus more on creating policies for the specific applications used in their business. And I can give you some examples like Office 365, instead of its IP addresses and all. I mean, you have option to customize and redefine your own policy. So that helps IT administrators to redefine that. Yeah. This change of focus also simplifies setting policies for each and every application. You can set up your own policy. Yeah. Such as which application to allow or block, which one you need to prioritize for your business. Like, you have some business saving applications which you need to, prioritize. And gradually, identifying applications by application name rather than a, non-descript of secure IP address or port number. So that's another beauty it has. Yeah. Since, I mean, an SD-WAN uses a public internet as one or more of its WAN connections. Yeah, some basic security protection is required, and that is where I want to bring attention of attendees and panelist members. Yeah, such as when I say that some basic security protection is required, means I can give you some examples like such as the stateful firewall, that provides functionality including IP port and protocol filtering. Yeah, domain name filtering, I can give another example, and network and port address translation also, but what we call it NAT, or we can call it PAS. Yeah, so this this approach no longer provides sufficient protection for users, devices, and applications. For basically there are three reasons for that. And we have seen trend. What we have noticed that application migration to the cloud, users connecting from anywhere, and accelerating volume of threats. So these three factors, I mean, really, compelling us to rethink about that and redesign the whole policy. Yeah. So if you see most of non-business critical applications, there is a trend that 70 to 80% applications has been migrated on the cloud or in a process to migrate on the cloud. Yeah. Then we have another trend, what I had mentioned during my previous discussion. Now users are connecting from anywhere. That's a new trend. The other thing you have, aggregating volume of threats. So if you see, business is booming for threat actors. Yeah, I mean, during pandemic, business has suffered, but for threat actors, it has been booming. Yeah. So as we all have seen from the successful ransomware attacks recently happened in US and in UK and all. So and that has shut down businesses and businesses have really suffered. So accelerating volume of threats is also one of the factors which we need to think about. The overall, I mean, increasing importance of cybersecurity is one good thing is happening, around the globe. Yeah. So organizations, they have realized that cybersecurity is important for their business, and it can, it was never before like this pandemic started. So now dependency on IT is more. Workforce, connecting remotely. So they understood very well that cybersecurity is equally important for them. Yeah. So that's all. I mean, they have in their mind. So earlier it was not like that, because I have been seen in many cases where cybersecurity was always a low priority. Yeah. So typically, SD-WAN, or we talk about SASE, I mean, it has a very strong potential to secure your overall landscape. I don't talk about only endpoint or network. I mean, it can give you. It can give you something like a peace of mind when you adopt and you define it properly. So it has a good feature, I mean, good potential, and it's very interesting because it has a perfect blend of what you need to secure your overall landscape. Yeah. So that's all from my side. Back over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right. So we have 1 minute remaining. Sir Benedict and Sir Subrat, would it be okay if you can share a 30-second each of final message to our audience? So, Sir Benedict, go for it.
Okay, thank you. So again, just like what Mr. Kyndryl already mentioned, the concept now for each of the companies that we need to also consider is how the feasibility of the operations, right? In terms of the ability for conducting SASE, it will be decided again based on the necessity, right? Like for instance, the current pandemic situation, actually, it will be a good driving force. But not all enterprise, I think, will be ready to do that. And then in order for us to improve the security, in order for us to be able to implement SASE, I don't think it's going to be soon enough. So still, there will be some timing needed. But going forward, this will be the very good solution for us to improving the security for the operations of the companies.
All right, thank you for that, Sir Subrat. Yeah.
Well, I think the question was SASE and SD-WAN. It's very, very important that one has to understand SD-WAN came little prior to SASE, and SASE is the new kid on the block. It's very, very important for enterprises to understand that they are the two sides of the coin. So they go together. Invariably, if you want to do a transformation, they go together. If you have not adopted SASE, it is important that you consider them very positively, because they are the two sides of a coin. If technology and transport get converged through SD-WAN, and the control plane remains to give you the flexibility of converging the transport plane when in SD-WAN, for the payload and the security and the protocol and payroll management, SASE plays a very, very critical role. SD-WAN, if does the convergence for the control plane centralization for the transport, the payload and protocol management plays very, very critical role in a separated control plane in SASE. So they go together. And if somebody is looking at a transformation, it's important that they consider both together, one for the transport and control plane separation, one for the payload and protocol based traffic engineering separation through a separate control plane. That's what my take would be. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. And yeah, so that's the last question, last set of items. So for everyone watching this, please give our expert panelists a big round of applause. So good job to everyone. You were able to take on several things for this topic. But yeah, I think we're good. And back to you, Havana. Yeah, go for it.
Thank you so much. Well, with this, I'd really like to thank all our eminent panelists, Vijender, Benedict, Subrat, for giving us your key insights on all the questions which were posed to you in the panel by Joshua. So once again, a big thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you once again.